And you know it's working. Oh, all right. Now I know it's working. It's moving.
Okay.
No problem. Okay. Okay, we have. We're speaking now to Danny Bell. He just played a terrific game with John Bike. How does it feel to play against a guy who's so powerful? How do you come up with a game plan to deal with a guy at that level?
Well, Bike being so quick and having so much power, you know, I like that because I'm a guy who likes a quick ball, a quick fast ball. So when I play him, I try to keep him in the back because he's so quick in front. And I have to check all the time for his kill shot with his left. You know, you don't want to keep the ball on the left side because he's so strong. So I try to keep the ball to the ceiling on the right side and make sure that the ball doesn't turn around in the corner.
Yeah, right. I saw you in those volleys trying to keep the ball high above the waist to make sure that he doesn't have his kill shot. Is there a kind of focus that is kind of exhausting, having continually to worry about the power of this man?
Well, I worry about the power, but with that new ball especially, the power and the new ball, because the new ball is much rougher now, the texture of the ball, and he can hop the ball as ever. You know, I've never seen him hop the ball like that before yesterday. And that caught me by surprise because I'm used to his power. You know, I play John once a month or every 2 months during the season. So I'm used to his power, but the power and the hops, that makes a big difference.
So there's a big, now on the hops, which we should explain to the audience, is a kind of a hook on the ball after it bounces.
Exactly, yeah. The ball is going toward you, and then as soon as it hits the floor, it changes direction to the right or to the left.
Yeah.
And John usually had a good hop on one side, but now with that new ball, he can do it on both sides. So it makes you wonders all the time on which side the ball's going to go.
So you have to make a decision about how you're going to hit the ball right after it hits the floor, right?
Yeah, well, by looking at the way he swings also, sometimes you can tell in advance that the ball's going to go on the right or on the left. Just looking at his elbow, especially on the serve.
Are you able to read John?
Yeah, I'm able to read him on the serve, but during the volley, he never used to have hops, but now he does because he's taking more time and he knows the ball is reacting a lot more to the hops now.
Now, how much in playing against a player of that caliber are you anticipating the things that he is doing and having to guess to make up for those seconds or two?
Well, you know, I like to play with these guys because most of them, I know them and I've played them for years and I know where they're going to hit the ball. I like to anticipate. And sometimes you can block on one side, so you force the guy to shoot on the other side and you know he has no other chance. So you got to go to that side because you blocked the other one.
Well, I had the feeling that you were trying to establish your game against John.
Well, for sure, because I don't want John take advantage of the court, so I have to make sure I keep him in the back, you know, change the volley, change the serve, not always do the same thing, you know, you gotta mix it so you will wonder all the time what I'm gonna do. And I like to talk to him in the court, you know,
How do you talk to him? What do you say to him?
I said, it was a nice shot, but you could have go to the left or you could have go to the right. And I tell him, oh, that was the big reverse there, you know, a big hop. I didn't know you could do it or something. And he answers to me. We play a little bit of a mental game, him and I, all the time.
He talks to himself, so there are two people talking to him, his opponent and himself.
Yeah. Well, I talk to myself too a lot, so sometimes he responds to me also.
And what do you say to yourself?
Well, mainly, I tell myself to relax and to use another shot instead of go back to basics. You know, instead of going for a kill, just think and go back to the right side all the time. And I tell myself, don't forget he's a lefty. Don't forget he's a lefty. But I talk to myself in French. so he doesn't know what I'm telling. You know?
He has an awfully good right hand for a lefty, I have to say.
Yeah, of course, also, but I prefer the ball to be on the right side instead of a left side.
Yeah. Are you from France or Quebec? Or?
I'm from Quebec, Canada, yeah.
And
I speak French all the time over there in Quebec.
Is there a strong handball game in Quebec?
Yeah, well, we have, at my club, personally, we have about 50 players, and it's pretty good. But we don't have any young players right now. I've been starting a new junior program in the last month, and we have about 15 kids coming right now. So hopefully we'll develop that, and we'll have more players in the future.
Et vous avez une chose pour dire avec les gens québécoises?
Oui, ben, je veux dire merci à tout le monde de m'avoir encouragé pendant ma carrière.
OK. Et les gens des États-Unis que je... how do you say handball?
Balle au mur.
Balle au mur.
Balle au mur. It's mainly ball on the wall.
Right.
It's not the same translation.
Yeah, it's wall ball. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. So, how did you get into the game? How did you discover that it was it was a métier of yours to play this?
That was 22 years ago. I used to play with my brother, you know, at where my father used to work in a sports center. And we were there with my dad, and someday he introduced us to the game. He said, just wait for me until I finish working. So he put us in a court, and me and my brother played with a tennis ball.
Really?
And then we liked the game, and we had so much fun. And some other guys, they decided to have a junior program, so we got involved, and I've been in the game ever since.
Now, are you in the game for the beauty or for the competition?
Both, because competition is in my blood. You know, it's probably started with my brother. Everything we did was very competitive between me and my brother. So even for not sports, you know, everything, grades in school or whatever. So I have the competition into me. But the beauty of the game, for sure, because I could have picked tennis or, you know, a sports there where there is more money. But I play handball because I love the game of handball.
Yeah. Now, is there a peculiar kind of aesthetic about this game? I mean, it's in a closed area. There are all of these wonderful angles. There's this very singular kind of geometry about this game.
Oh yeah, it's well, the more walls you have, the more decision you have to take, you know, because if you play one wall, which is a tough game, one wall I think takes a lot more control, because if you miss a ball, the ball's not going to hit the side wall and come back to the front.
Right.
But if in four walls you have more shots in your repertoire, you know, because there's more walls and more opportunities and more decision to take.
Okay. Now, as you got to the level, as you got to higher and higher levels, had you found there were resources that you had to find inside yourself that you previously had no idea that you had?
Well, most of the time, you know, when a player develops to become a top player, somewhere in his career, it takes a big win. It takes a big win to stop the mental break that you have. You know, I don't know if you understand what I mean. But
sure, I understand.
After a big win, you believe that you can beat anybody. And that's what happened to me when I played my first pro stop. I was just a qualifier then, and I qualified beating Tom Blakey from Florida, which was a top player at the time. And then the next day, I knew I could beat anybody. And I played John Sable from New York, and I lost in a tiebreaker 11-9. And at the time, he was number 3 on the world. So that's what put me onto the top player.
Yeah. See, I always have the feeling there are 2 levels of success. You have a success, an initial success, and then you get very brave. You start to realize, you get the confidence to feel that you can almost do anything, and you play a very different kind of game after the initial success. Am I wrong about this?
Oh, you're perfectly right, because it happened a month ago. Like a player like Tyler Hamel, a Canadian who's been on the tour but never had any big win, and last month or 2 months ago, he beat 2 of the best players in the world. And from now on, I know he's going to be a different player.
So, how do you feel? Are you about 30?
I'm turning 35 in October.
Yeah, well, this game really keeps you young, doesn't it?
Yeah, it helps a lot.
Are you worried at all about how you're going to adjust on a mental level or a physical level also to the slippage of skills that seems to happen in handball after 35 or so?
Well, I've been lucky because I haven't got any weights, you know. I haven't got any weights to carry. I'm still the same. I'm 150, and I was 150 15 years ago. So that helps me a lot. But I'm still quick, you know. I don't train as much as I used to because the desire is not there anymore, you know, to go to the club and train every day. But I like to compete. And for 1 or 2 good matches, I know I can still beat anybody.
Now, do you miss the lack of ferocity that you previously had?
Yeah, for sure. But sometimes I can block my mind to be as aggressive as ever.
Yeah. Now, I notice when athletes that are able to command that ferocity and focus it, as they start to get older, they mellow out. They lose the ferocity, and then they try to make up for it, and it's a kind of confusion, a mental confusion that they have. Have you had that experience?
Yes, I've had that because you know, you go into a court and sometimes you know you don't deserve to win because you haven't trained as hard as you used to. So. But sometimes it can be good because you play more relaxed, you know, so you don't care if you lose because you don't really deserve to win, so you play relaxed, and then sometimes that makes you play better.
Has your philosophy of life changed as your ferocity has diminished?
That's a good point, probably.
How so?
Well, going to these tournaments all the time, meeting people, and they let you know that they like you and that they want to see you play, and some people say you're my favorite player or whatever. You know, it makes you think that you don't only give pleasure to yourself, but you give pleasure to the other people around.
So there's a kind of generosity that you feel now.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
For sure.
And there's a lateral connection that you have between yourself and the crowd.
Yeah. And when I first came to the U.S. for tournaments, you know, nobody knew me, and I was the underdog, and I was the Canadian, so nobody would cheer for me. But now in the last few years, you know, everywhere I go, they like to see me play, and they cheer for me and all that, so it's kind of fun now.
Is there a real cultural difference in handball here and handball in Quebec?
No, not at all. It's always big family friendly, and it's the same thing.
Now, I notice in New York City, if you play one wall, it's a very street game. Everybody screams at each other, curses. But in the place that we are now, the New York Athletic Club, it has a veneer of gentility. How is it in Quebec? Has it got a veneer of gentility? Or
oh yes. But well, there's always a few guys that likes to be aggressive too much, you know. But most of the people are just like here at the AC, and they're very nice and very polite, and they like to play a fair game.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a last question, Danny. How do you make a living and still be a competitive handball player?
Well, I'm lucky because I'm a physical education teacher, so I stay in shape. You know, I'm in the gym all day with the kids playing basketball, volleyball, so you know, I don't need maybe to train as much as the other guys who push a pencil, you know, behind the desk. So I'm active all day, so it helped me a lot.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're speaking to Danny Bell.
Thank you.
Okay, Danny, thank you.
Thanks.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, folks, we're speaking, or I'm speaking rather, with Steve Lott, who's a very interesting and complex and diverse man. He is not only a former champion of four-wall in the doubles, and he is a long-time, he's a member of NIAC, but also he's been involved in boxing for a long time, haven't you?
Well, the boxing came about because my coach in handball for many years was Jimmy Jacobs. I met Jim, of course, playing handball, and in the early 60s, he became my coach, And eventually, after I decided not to play competitively too much handball, Jim was kind enough to give me a job in the company Big Fights Incorporated. And that's how I began working with fight films and boxers.
How come you stopped in competitive play, Steve?
In competitive play, I really was never a force in singles. In doubles, I was very fortunate to play with some of the great doubles players of all time. And my game was more suited to a defensive type of doubles discipline where you must keep the ball in play and allow a partner who's a shot maker to get the shot and make it. And the players I was fortunate enough to play with were legendary ball players, beginning with Freddie Lewis and of course then Marty Decatur. So I was very fortunate.
Yeah. Had you felt a certain kind of competition with them? I mean, you know, as a man, you know, all these guys were the shot makers and you were the defensive player. Had you always been comfortable with that?
That's when you're a doubles player, you have to have a lot of things happening on the court. Forgetting the competition, your own partner, and you have to be a team. And I don't think I remember or recall any team in the history of handball that had a competitive edge between them that became a competent team, not one. Going back to the early days of Sam Haber and Kenny Schneider, and Sloan and Collins, Decatur and Jacobs, even great ball players like Freddie Lewis and Gordy Pfeiffer, even as competitors on their own in singles, once they got on a doubles court, there was the key word is ego between them, and that's the key word. There cannot be any ego because that inhibits your ability to play doubles. Now,
after you play a while, have you got an intuitive sense of where your partner is going to be or what he's thinking or how certain kinds of patterns that have happened are going to repeat themselves so you can throw your intuition into action to get that extra step to...
Well, that always happens, I'm sure, in every other team sport. In handball, with a lot of experience between the two partners, the same thing happens. You learn that your partner takes certain types of shots. And in doing so, you want to position yourself primarily to give him that shot, and number two, not to get hit with the ball.
Right.
So that happens with experience. You know what shots he's taking, especially from the rear of the court when you're up front. That's the key time. You must not get hit with the ball. And also to give him the opportunity to cover the court that he does in a certain way that makes best use of you as a team. So you must know your partner very well, and he must know precisely what balls you're leaving. Otherwise, there's no teamwork.
So there's a kind of a marvelous quality of intimacy between yourself and your partner.
Yes, and that's really missed today in teamwork a lot. Even the communication, mostly on a low level of doubles play, you'll never hear communication between the partners. And that's a key thing, even if it's saying your shot or my shot, yours, mine. The best ball players always talk on the court. You'll hear that every second. And eventually, the communication becomes just slight parts of a word. Playing with, great Marty Decatur, in the beginning, he would choreograph what shots he was going to take by saying yours and mine. And eventually, we got to play so much that all I heard him say was, hip. And I knew to leave the ball go, okay? Then you're really cruising. Then you're in a zone where you know precisely he's going to probably take that shot anyway, but just hearing that little part of a word gives you the confidence to say, leave the shot go.
Could you compare the kind of intimacy that you have in a situation like that with the intimacy that a man and a woman have?
Well, I don't know how to compare the two. That would be there's so many different levels between a man and a woman. The difference is that in a man and woman relationship, there's a tremendous amount of emotion involved. The key thing on a handball court is you cannot permit your emotions to be involved in any way, shape, or form. It's purely
objective.
You have to be objective. You have to hit the ball. You have to know where the ball is going. The more unemotional you can be while still focused and excited and into the match and fired up, it's a combination of the fire to win, but the relaxation to not to be inhibited when you're hitting the shot. That's a very fine line, as it is in any sport. So the biggest difference, of course, is you must be objective in handball or any sport. You
Sure.
can't be emotional.
Sure. So that, I was thinking about, the intuitive and the bonding element. There's a certain point where two people who are autonomous, they have a common interest, they have a common purpose. And it just occurred to me that, there is supposed to be a bonding element among men. It's supposed to be, in fact, part of our social structure, that we can trust other people, we can care about other people. Is there something about handball as a ritual, as a rite, that stands for that trusting and bonding?
Well, I don't know if it's the word I would use is respect. Now, it does happen that two great handball players play together who are very close. They're friends. That's a special time. But that's not too often. Only the great teams come along that are special friends. Happens very infrequently. Sloan and Collins in four-wall. Decatur and Jacobs in four-wall. Other than those teams in four-wall, I remember seeing Sam Haber and Kenny Schneider play doubles, but after the match was over, there was a handshake and that was it. It wasn't that hug that two close friends would have on the court. And that's rare. That's nice, though. But the key thing is respect. Even the doubles teams that have won over the years that weren't close friends, one handball player would come from one city and meet another guy from another city and play in the nationals, there was still a great respect, and they showed it on the court. But it wasn't that warm bond. It was just business. It was just business. The difference is that when you play with someone you like, a dear friend, and you win, it's a very special moment. It's very special.
All right, I feel we have just have seen a match in which there were two doubles teams, I don't want to mention their names, and they had absolutely no communication.
Well, actually, the communication, it was quite evident to me. The key words are yours and mine. That's the most important thing. And in a match where the ball is rocketing around the court, unless that happens, the team's dead. So there was a lot of that, and that was there. Both sides, yours, mine, yours, mine. They don't play with each other that often that they can become so familiar with each other's styles that it's comfortable. That's number one. And number two, one of the players is so hard a hitter, it makes it very difficult and disconcerting for the other team to be able to be calm. Everything becomes a little frantic.
Right.
And that's part of the game too. The objective, if you can, is to make the other team frantic, is to make them no longer objective, is to make them emotional. The more you can do that, the better chance you have of upsetting them, inhibiting them, and winning the match.
So there's a kind of mental combat that's occurring out there. You're trying to undermine the rhythm of the other team, are you not?
It's like that in every sport. Usually, the players in every sport are very close, very close. And it's the emotional stability of one player or one team that permits them to score the point or make the shot more so than the other player or the other team. Yeah. It's that fine line of emotional stability.
Now, there are two levels of athletic ability. There's the intuitive, that kind of perfection, and then there's the cognitive, where you pick up a kind of a, where you've learned something that's imperfect, but you're thinking and it's more adaptive. Are you saying that you try to push the other team out of their intuitive level and into a level where they have to think all the time and they're struggling, but it's more adaptive, it's more cognitive?
Well, it's much more simple than that. It's just making them feel uncomfortable. That's all it takes. It's making them feel uncomfortable. It's making one baseball player, a pitcher, making that batter feel that much uncomfortable. He's won. One tennis player with his serve all up, making him uncomfortable. A handball player against another player, even though he's hitting a shot he himself does not like to go for, he should have the discipline to know the other guy likes it even less. Okay, and that's difficult. To go and perform certain techniques on the court that you're not confident in, that you don't like to do, that you're uncomfortable with yourself, knowing he's more uncomfortable. That's the mark of a great ball player.
Wow. How many points would you give in a 21 game to lack of comfort? is it 5? Is it 3?
It's less. It's less. It's probably 2 or 3. 2 or 3. But that 2 or 3 is the difference between winning 21-18 and losing 21-18. That in order to make the other person feel uncomfortable, you have to hit such a fine shot, which might happen 3 times a game, to hit the ball in such a certain place that his emotions come into play saying, here it comes, I don't like this, I might be uncomfortable, I'm not used to it, it's not my best shot. That happens 3 times a match. But that's all you want to do, is that 3 times a match.
Yeah. Now, you know, in the game that we saw, there were clear kinds of game plans where they were trying to work against the weakness of players on the other side. And in fact, I think we can mention the player John Bike. He pretty much overwhelmed the partner of Eric Kleiman. Again and again and again, the same thing happened. Have you got a different plan if you're against a player that has no defects than if you do that, if you can spot a defect and go after it?
That's always the objective of the team playing against a terrific ball player, is to pick up something that they can use against him. In doing that, in trying to do that, you as a team yourself have to be so finely tuned and so technically proficient in performing each shot that then you can attempt to do that with the great ball player. And that begins with defense. If you keep the ball in play well enough, you can get a chance to score. And the problem is that the ball is coming at them so fast that their defensive abilities are a little weak. But that's all it takes, is that little bit of weakness to mishit the ball, to set the ball up and allow the other team to have a shot. And that's the tough part of playing a very hard hitter in doubles with 2 ball players trying to defend. If one of them is a little weak in defense and it's not superb in defense, that's all the match needs. And the match was close, but it's 2 points is a victory. It doesn't have to be 21-5. No one remembers the score. They always remember who wins.
Yeah. Now, had you and your partner, had you changed your game plans to adapt to various other teams? You know, I presume you did, but could you give examples of the kind of fine-tuning that you gave to your game to meet certain kinds of...
Generally, 2 obvious things would happen. If you're playing 2 orthodox ball players, meaning 2 right-handed ball players, you'd watch them if possible play and try to pick out one of the guys to play. As a doubles team, if you're good, if you're proficient, you always attempt to play one of the guys and make it a match of 2 against 1. That's the best way to enter a match. Now, if the team is not orthodox, if they're not 2 right-handed ball players, in 4-wall, if it's a lefty and righty, it becomes a little more difficult, but you can still be done. The one big area of change is the service, because the service now, you begin to serve against 2 strong hands, and then you attempt, perhaps, to serve balls toward the middle, where both men have the chance to hit each other, to try to decide who's going to take the ball. So that's 2 general ways of looking at a match. Picking out one guy, or if you're playing a lefty and righty, to try to make the ball come to the middle so that they're always choosing, yours, mine. That's 1 inch of indecision. They're not knowing whether he or I are going to take the ball on the serve. Then after that's over, there can be some of that, but mostly it's playing one of the guys.
Now, have you got a sense of melancholy at times if the other team has not tried to change and adapt to your strategy? Have you got the sense, I'm not able to communicate with these guys? Have you ever had that feeling?
To be able to communicate with the other team?
Yeah, because they aren't trying to adapt to your strategy. They're just falling down. They're keeling over.
Well, I wouldn't use the term melancholy. I wouldn't show any emotion.
Right.
I wouldn't show any emotion. But my partner and I would know that what we had anticipated doing in the match is working. And we do it very objectively. I would hope